Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 860 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. It is a lovely blue sky, sunshiny day here at the Beaver Lodge. And I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey. And not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Mine is doing rather well. Still a little sleepy. I didn't get enough hours last night. But on the whole, feeling good. As you know, if you watched the show yesterday afternoon, curling team won yesterday. And my men's curling team are at the top of the standings, just like the Canadian Paralympic curling team, also at the top of the standings after a great victory against Team China yesterday, the two-time Paralympic champions. So go Canada, go! And I think they might have won again this today. So yes, perfect 5-0 at the Paralympics so far, with some incredible shots by John Thurston being made. It seems that the one I was talking to you about the other day that you need to see has received over 1 million views so far. So yeah. I put it on our Twitter feed, wrote it on sometime last night, so you might be able to find it there. I would show it to you, but then we'd get a copyright ding, so we don't really want that. But it's absolutely fantastic. He's doing a really good job, and the team seems to be on a roll, which is very good. We will take that. Um, so yeah, if you're good, have a match again tonight with my regular competitive team, and then tomorrow 2-person stick, and that will be it for curling for me for this week. But we are getting close to playoff time, so every match is important to try to get those good playoff seedings, assuming we qualify. That is, of course. So yeah, pretty excited about it. Let's see what else is going on. Well, again, today had to start a little later. Again, I hope nobody was worried because it was just a matter of being a good Beaver boyfriend today, and we had some planning and scheduling stuff. And my Beaver sweetie needed a little extra help with something, and of course, I'm a if I can help, I will kind of person. So I did. So it was just a question of me. It was being my turn to be a good Beaver sweetie this morning. So everything's fine at this end. But yeah, so just had to make sure that we're a team, so we have to work together sometimes, and that means having to adjust and adapt, and that's what we did today. All right, kids and cubs. I do, and I promise you, I will get to the Skippy stuff because there is a lot, and there's a lot that happened yesterday. The Conservatives just basically uh, Well, let's just put it this way: if Mark Carney was going to suffer anything at all for his stance, or what the media seems to be um, agreeing to state is his ever shifting stance on Iran, which to me, again, seems to have been pretty clear all the way throughout. Um, though we could have probably have comms people there to make it such that we don't have to do as much work, and that his message could be less subject to reinterpretation or creative reinterpretation. Um, At the same time that the United States' story is shifting all over again. Yesterday, I was talking to you about the United States saying, like, Donald Trump saying the wars have, is complete, pretty much, which is really interesting because it seems that now they are calling it a war. Because at the beginning, they spent a lot of time saying, this is not a war, this is a special operation. But every time they seem to talk about it in shorthand, they keep calling it a war. And now it seems, he said, "Oh, well, it could be over pretty soon, pretty much." And then, price of oil had a drop, and the stock market sort of stabilized. And then he went back to the press. Well, no, no, maybe not. So, again, we don't know where it stands with him. Apparently, as well, at some point during the day, during all of his activities, according to Rachel Maddow, at least, he had the time to place a 1 hour call to the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, at some point. And it would seem, if the Kremlin is to be believed, which again, you've got to take everything it says with a salt lick, it was information that was made public by the Kremlin that the White House didn't think it was important for people to know that Donald Trump was on the phone for an hour with Vladimir Putin yesterday. Of course, we're also hearing stories that uh, the Russians, or at least Putin administration, is giving intel to Iran that would help it to target U.S. bases, and Donald Trump seems to be fine with that. Seems to be so fine with that that he's lifted sanctions on Russian oil, according to the Hitchell Frazen. The U.S. is lifting some restrictions on Russian oil, considering more actions to unsanction it as the conflict in Iran rises. Treasury Scott's Secretary Scott Bessent said Friday. Bessent told Fox Business that the U.S. would allow India to buy Russian barrels. Quote, yesterday, Treasury agreed to let our allies in India start buying Russian oil that was already on the water. The Indians had been very good actors. We had asked them to stop buying sanctioned Russian oil this fall. They did. They were going to substitute it with U.S. oil, but to ease the temporary gap of oil around the world, we have given them permission to accept the Russian oil, he continued. We may sanction other Russian oil, he added to host Larry Kudlow. The other thing Treasury can do here, Larry, is there are hundreds of millions of barrels of sanctioned crude on the water, and in essence, by unsanctioning them, Treasury can create supply, Bessent said. We are looking at that. We're going to keep a cadence of announcing measures to bring relief to the market. In a post on the social platform X Thursday night, Bessent said the Trump administration would allow Indian refiners to purchase Russian oil for 30 days. Quote, this deliberately short-term measure will not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government as it only authorizes transactions involving oil already stranded at sea, he wrote. The stopgap measure will alleviate pressure caused by Iran's attempt to take global energy hostage, he added. Oil prices have been on the rise all week after U.S. began its strikes on Iran, which is located in the Strait of Hormuz, a key oil shipping channel. The equivalent of about 20% of the world's oil consumption typically flows through the strait daily. On Friday, both international benchmark Brent crude and U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate oil were trading at more than $90 per barrel, up about $20 in the last week. U.S. gasoline prices were also rising, averaging $3.32 per gallon on Friday, up about 34 cents from the week prior. Both the Biden and Trump administrations had previously imposed sanctions on Russian oil because of the country's war in Ukraine. They argued that cutting off Russian oil could end a major revenue stream for the oil-heavy country and hurt its ability to continue the war. When gasoline prices rose at the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Trump criticized then-President Biden. Trump made energy affordability a key part of his message to voters. And it seems that there is indeed some chatter going on uh, about um, indeed lifting even more sanctions, that's hinted in that article. So that is really inspiring, and creates a really odd situation, considering, as we had previously reported, that uh, Ukraine is helping United States, well, or the United States had to go running to Ukraine for help uh, dealing with Shaheds by using Ukrainian interceptor drone technology. And of course, the big sort of haha moment uh, going on with regard to that um, is that, did JD Vance uh, have some time or take a moment to say thank you, and given what happened um, in the awful office when Zelensky came in and was essentially, for all intents and purposes, ambushed, right? Um, so there is some chatter out there about that type of seeming support um, for Russia in terms of allowing oil to be sold and Russia to gain some profit with which it funds its war on Ukraine. So a lot of this is not making the most sense in certain ways, right? Because you would think, well, then why would Ukraine bother to help? I mean, hopefully, hopefully, uh, it's going to happen oh, that there's going to come a moment, I guess, at which Trump is going to realize that Putin has been, is not his friend. I don't, for some reason, see that coming because if this is a matter of compromat, let's just say, for purposes of pure speculation, that that alleged PP tape is real, and let's just say, suppose, not saying that this is the case, but let's just suppose that given what we have learned from the Epstein files, that there are other people on that PP tape. I'll let you draw the rest of the connection from there. Um, uh, yeah, that could be a reason uh, for which Donald Trump would be seemingly okay with Russia to Iran that could have played a part in the deaths of at least seven American servicemen. Um, Perhaps could also explain if Israel happened to have that same compromat, why it is it appears that a lot of the words that come out of Donald Trump's mouth, like "we will not stop until we have reached our total war objectives," or the claim that uh, we had a feeling that Iran was going to bomb, so we did it first. Um, that might not. It gives the impression that Trump might be being led by the nose on this, rather than the one who is leading. So that could be a situation there too. But when I keep on hearing the various stories and the flip flops changing, and oh yeah, the war's pretty much over, and then like a couple of hours later, no, 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 it's not. We're going to be continuing until this is done. Um, it gives the impression that maybe somebody's either making phone calls or receiving phone calls to keep them in line. I could be wrong, but I hear a lot of these words and I go, oh yeah, yeah, that's the compromat talking. But I could be wrong. Could be wrong. Um, the other thing, however, that nobody is going to be wrong about is this situation with what's going on with the oil. That it's going to be, a week or two, and that's it. No, that's not the case at all. This is something. Even if everything stopped right now, everybody declared a truce, and no more bombing, no more closing of the Strait of Hormuz. We're just going to get back to how everything was before this whole folly started. Um, there wouldn't, how would I put it? It takes a long time to bring oil back online. It does. You can't just flip it on and off like a switch. So there is going to be some disruption for a while yet in terms of prices. 2 weeks, maybe close to a month, even if everything stopped today, and everything is not stopping today. So yeah, um, alongside that, in Canada, you have a lot of people doing the, oh, but if only we had approved more pipelines during the Trudeau years. Look at everything we could be doing now in terms of trade. We had Pierre Poilievre share a tweet the other day of him, uh, I guess, somewhere in Germany on his Euro tour. Um, Pointing to a tanker that allegedly at first had $250 billion worth of energy in it, which I thought was a little much. And it turns out he had to delete his tweet and redo it again because he was off by a couple of zeros, or precisely um, $249,750,000,000, because there was really $250 million of energy in that boat. But, okay. uh, and it would seem that with everything that we know now, and I do have to take some time um, to look at the full press conference on this, but according, thanks to Scott Robertson's feed, we have a few key clips from it. But this is stuff that can't be good here. After everything that we know that it's an illegal war. We know that there's a violation of international law. We know that um, a whole bunch of students died when something was dropped on a school. The war has expanded to other regions. Many more nations have been brought into it. We've seen the press have a meltdown at creative, as it was creatively reinterpreting Mark Carney's words. Oh my God, I can't believe he said he supported the U.S. action. Didn't actually say that. Oh my God, I can't believe he said we were real. There's a possibility we'll be putting boots on the ground. Well, maybe not. Actually, we weren't consultant. We are not a participant. We're not engaged. And if ever we have to be engaged, it's probably because we're going to have to be dealing with the consequences of this folly, consequences on our other allies and partners, or maybe even Canadian interests. After all of that, Pierre Poilievre had a press conference yesterday, and during it, this question came up, and he said this.
You said explicitly it's in our interest that the regime is replaced. Will you say explicitly whether you support what the U.S. and Israel have been doing and whether you believe that any of it is in accordance with international law?
Well, we already said that. We support the action to overturn the regime, because this is a regime that has killed Canadians. They killed over 100 Canadians. They have 700 agents on Canadian streets terrorizing our Persian and Jewish communities, carrying out terrorist attacks against our people. This is the biggest state sponsor of terror in the world. That is why we have not equivocated. We also need to focus on what we control at home, which is here at home, to secure our borders against these terrorists, to bring down energy costs and food prices for our people. And that's what we as Conservatives are going to do here at home.
All right. So, again, very interesting. It seems that the image shown to you is a little choppier than the image I have here at home, based on what I can see was being broadcast on my screen. Hopefully, you were able to hear that clearly. It wasn't a little weird. Um, all right. Um, so yeah, let's go through that little snippet of answer there, kids or cubs. Excuse me while I try to bring myself back on screen here. Ever since they reorganized all the buttons, it's taken me a little longer to figure out what's what again. Um, yeah. Um, okay. After all that we know, they are expressing support for this. Now, you will notice that they are expressing support for this uh, in a manner similar that Marnie was alleged to have expressed support for this. He doesn't go right. Um, let me get his words again, specifically for you, kits and cubs. Hopefully, you don't hear this because I'm going to be playing it back for myself here. So he's asked whether he explicitly supports and whether he believes any of it is in accordance with international law. He avoids the international law question. Absolutely, completely, which is what Prime Minister Carney did in his first statement as well. Didn't make any statement about it being in conjunction with international law. That made a lot of people lose their minds, particularly in the conservative press. But here we have the conservative leader doing the exact same thing. And then said, we support the action to overturn the regime. Mark Carney's answer was, we support the action to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon and exporting terrorism. He is supporting action to overturn the regime. He didn't say he supports the bombs, right? But he is saying this 10, 11 days into it after all we know, whereas Prime Minister Mark Carney said it in the first few minutes or hours that stuff was being reported. He makes a point because this is a regime that killed Canadians, which is the same point that Mark Carney made when he talked about the Canadian photojournalist. And I could wish I remembered her name off the top of my head. But she had been arrested, and I believe was reported she had been rather tortured. Zara Kazemi, her name. She had been died in 2003 after being beaten in Iranian custody. And of course, the airplane, Ukrainian Airlines airplane that was down, that had, I believe, 55 Canadians on board. It's one of the reasons that we have no diplomatic relations with Iran. So using the same rationale, and of course not talking at all of crimes that were committed by the other belligerents in this conflict. And then he says Iran has over 700 agents on Canadian soil. I'm not exactly sure how Pierre Poilievre would know that, given that he does not have a security clearance. That seems like a number that he would be just making up. And then, of course, it says that they are carrying out terrorist attacks against our people. There may be, if there are such agents, there might be, of course, extortion, coercion, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure those are terrorist attacks like we have come to know them, and like stuff that have gone on the Parliament Hill or stuff like that. But uh, I guess you could um, suggest that if terrorists are committing crimes on individual citizens without necessarily blowing them up, uh, and they're feeling attacked, that those are terrorist attacks. It's not the way we conventionally use the term, but there might be a little creative license there. And it says, that is why we have not equivocated. Okay. And then he goes into Mark Carney's plagiarizing Mark Carney's speeches again, saying that we need to focus on what we can control. And he goes, secure our borders, right, and bring down energy costs. Not sure how we're going to do that. Again, because oil and gas and whatnot are globally set prices. Even if we had refineries on both coasts, and even if we had, a pipeline to the east, uh, the prices are still set internationally. We have a whole bunch of people going, "Oh, this is the reason we need more pipelines." Right? That's how we got onto this subject. By conservatives making the point, "Oh, if only we had those pipelines, Trudeau hadn't canceled them all." Yeah, and also, if only when you conservatives were in government, and we're looking at you two, Alberta, because when Stephen Harper was in government, there was a conservative government in Alberta. Oh, if only you had been able to lay a single inch of pipe to Tidewater or something, or had invested in a refinery. We would be able to use those today, but you guys didn't. And you keep on pointing to the guy that did manage to get something done of what you guys couldn't, but fundraised millions off of. You might want to perhaps look at your own house first, or look at your lack of contribution. Because the situation that we're in today, you guys contributed to it. And you did that before there was a Bill C-69 or a alleged no more pipelines law. You did so when you gutted a whole bunch of environmental laws like the Waterways Act in order to be able to get your pipeline, but you couldn't get it because you just couldn't bring yourselves to deal with Indigenous people in a constitutional manner. When the courts told you you had to do that instead of just doing the work, when the courts actually gave you a roadmap on how it was that you would need to go about that in order to meet the constitutional test, the constitutional requirement, you decided to call them activist judges and fundraise on that. That was the priority. What the priority wasn't to get those pipelines built. But now here we are in 2026, and oh, if only we had those pipelines that we did absolutely nothing to help come into being. And in the case of Alberta, pipelines that we don't even recognize exist, even though we pat ourselves on the back for the amount of money we're making off them. Got Danielle Smith posting, the best time to build a pipeline would have been 10 years ago. The second best time is now. Who's going to tell her we started building the TMX pipeline 8 years ago? They pretend it didn't happen, but they brag about what competent managers they are when they see the money come in. So yeah, apparently he has a luxury where he thinks that this is the moment to come out and say that um, do the same mistakes that Mark Carney has been accused of making. But he's doing this 12 days in with all the knowledge of everything that's happened. I doubt we will see days and days and days and days of press reports wondering, what the F? Where are you? Why are you making this position? Why are you standing with the United States? The question that people need to ask these conservatives, a media source needs to ask these conservatives specifically, is the same question they asked Mark Carney, or variation on it. If you were the government today, would you already have committed Canadian boots to be on the ground, or Canadian participation in support of Operation Epic Fury? Or would you be considering it, given that they seem to be all in? We have Melissa Landsman, who you saw in the background there, standing. This is her on CTV Power Play yesterday, being asked a question by Vashi Kapelos. And again, bit of an interesting moment. You can tell it seems that this is a position that they have taken, again, to claim at the same time that they are pro the women of Iran and people of Iran, and pro, at least if not Israel as a whole, a Netanyahu administration. And how those two, how it's hard to be those two things at the same time, considering what is actually being done on the ground at the moment.
You have a position on the regime. Do you have a position on the actions launched by the U.S. in Israel?
We support actions in order to have regime change.
But the regime change hasn't occurred.
The regime change hasn't occurred, and we supported those actions in light of a potential regime change. And we want to see a regime change. We want to see a regime replaced by an elected, an elected government chosen by the Iranian people.
You have a.
All right. So she supported the action because she wanted regime change. The conservatives supported this action because they wanted regime change. And now the regime change hasn't happened. Prime Minister allegedly, if you listen to the reinterpretation, supported this action in order to prevent Iran from having a nuclear bomb and being an exporter of terrorism. And that we know of, this probably didn't stop either. I mean, Iran is firing on other neighbors, and there have been missiles going into NATO allies' airspace. 2 so far that we know of, maybe more since then. And that nuclear program that had supposed to have been completely obliterated was not. Now, everybody in intelligence said that it wasn't when Donald Trump was claiming, yes, it was, and that you're saying so is fake news. But now, apparently, originally, we were going back to this because Iran was once again, I think for the 7th time since 1995, days or weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. Or at least industrial grade uranium or whatever. It's just this exact same thing they have been criticizing. This particular group of people have been criticizing the Prime Minister for 10 or 11 days, are exactly what they are doing now. But again, I stress, with knowledge of what's happened over the last 11 or 12 days. This is not a serious party. So yeah, again, I do not know how to explain conservatism these days, but that's the conservatives have always been in word 100% behind Israel and the Israeli administration, even more so since the October 7th attacks, right? The conservatives have given their approval to pretty much absolutely everything that was done in Gaza. A lot of their legislation and the sort of anti-immigration stances comes a lot from what has been happening as a result in Canadian streets, the protests and all that kind of stuff. Oh, if people are protesting, committing violent crime, they should be deported. We won't talk about due process or anything like that. Just deport them. All our problems are because of immigrants. The liberals are rubber stamping all these fake refugees coming to our country, but at the same time as they're rubber stamping them, there's this incredible backlog. What? If they're rubber stamping them, wouldn't that clear a backlog? I'm confused. And yeah, I see a lot of you are making the comments about yes, Melissa Lantsman's hairstyle choices. This has been a constant from her since she was in the public life, even before the day she was in elected politics. She's always had very creative hairstyles, and on this show, if you've been following us, we always we can't help but notice how people with very interesting hairstyles also seem to have very interesting politics. Margaret Thatcher, Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, Javier Milei, Melissa Lantsman. The really, really weird hair seems to be a tell, as far as we can tell. So yeah, I have a feeling that the conservative press is not going to be as upset and breathless these comments as they were about Mark Carney's, even though using different words and expressing support for different things, they seem to be saying, well, the conservatives are actually outright saying the thing that the alleged Mark Carney had said. Or if you are applying the same metric, well, they didn't actually say we support these strikes in Iran, but we did support regime change. The Prime Minister at the Lowy Institute did mention, like, in general, yes, we would like to see a regime change in Iran, given that, well, you know, we have no diplomatic relations with that country. There's a reason for that. So, again, that's a longstanding position. But wanting the regime to change in Iran and how it is that happens matters, particularly when some people decide to violate international law in order to try to make that happen. It is possible to want the regime in Iran to change with also wanting it to be done without violations of international law. The question needs to be put specifically to conservatives because they sidestepped the matter on international law. Do they support this attempt at regime change specifically, given it is in violation of international law? And you also have to remember that this is the party that did want to send us into Iraq. This was the party that was not able to see that there were no, indeed, that there were no WMDs, and voted to send us in Iraq and expressed much displeasure at the government for exercising its independent foreign policy and not going into Iraq. So one could presuppose, given this party's past history, that they've never met a war in which the U.S. has decided to engage, that they weren't tripping over their dicks to jump into. That, yeah, they would. And this in their, put in the context of their complete and total seeming unconditional support of the Netanyahu administration and everything it has done in Gaza so far. Because they want Jewish Canadians to believe that the conservatives support them. But again, when we look in actions and in deeds, when it comes time to vote on funding a Holocaust museum here in Canada or a Jewish community center, they don't have money for that. Uh, I'm just saying, if you're using the same yardstick for both, if what Mark Carney said made you uncomfortable, what the conservatives are saying today should be making you extremely uncomfortable. And if you're out there pointing to your fellow conservatives saying this, do you have a problem with where Mark Carney is now or where he was then? Because if you support the conservatives, somewhere along the way in all the reinterpretations of what Mark Carney said, there had to be at one point where you supported what he said. Either you did at the beginning when you thought he was all in, now that he's clarified that that's not what that meant, you don't anymore, or it's the other way around. But the haha, he changed his mind, his thoughts on this evolved as the situation evolved, seems to be rather weak. And now that your guy's coming out with everything that we know now, this is our position. Yeah, we support regime change. Yeah, you replaced the Ayatollah with his son. Was that the regime change you had in mind? And when you saw Donald Trump and seemingly go into this with no plan, no exit strategy, no clear objective, no clear rationale, and seemingly no consideration for the impact on global economic markets, including the price of oil, really? You thought that even if you did support regime change, even if you did support regime change by using force, even if you supported regime change by using force in violation of international law, would you still support it being done this way? With so little thought and planning? And utter disregard for human life and economic impacts? One has to wonder. All right, but enough about this stuff, because one of the main purposes of today's show was to talk about some things that flew under the radar a little bit. Uh, since we're talking about by-elections, there is a little bit of by-election that I wanted to bring up for you. One of the notes that I have is with regard to the thing I mentioned yesterday about the advantage that the Liberals would have, given that there are 3 by-elections and 2 that they are slated or expected to win because they are considered Liberal safe seats, and given that they won't have to spend as much money in those by-elections to defend those seats, it gives them more money for Terrebonne. It seems that a CBC journalist was on that, Darren Major, and he writes here, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet is laughing at the idea of fielding fake candidates in Toronto, even if it means ceding a financial advantage to the Liberals in a tight Montreal area by-election. Quote, we at the Bloc Québécois are funded by citizens out of pure conviction. That fuel is worth all the money in the world. We know that in purely financial terms, we will never be competitive with the Liberals or the Conservatives, and we have always done very well anyway. That's because they don't have to spend, at least in the federal election, any money outside of Canada. Sorry, outside of Quebec. Oh boy, because all their candidates are there, whereas all the other parties have to spread their dollars, of course, across 9 other provinces and 3 territories. Of course, the Bloc Québécois can campaign 24/7 in Quebec, whereas other campaigns, well, they have to cross the country. So in a federal election, they have some advantages. In a by-election, a little less. Prime Minister Mark Carney called 3 by-elections on Sunday, and a victory in all 3 would give the Liberals 172 seats in the House, a 1-seat majority. 2 of those by-elections are all but guaranteed to be Liberal wins. They're filling vacancies in Toronto left by former cabinet ministers Bill Blair and Chrystia Freeland, ridings considered to be party strongholds. The race will be much tighter in Terrebonne, where the Liberals won by one vote over the Bloc Québécois. Last month, the Supreme Court tossed the April result out and ordered a redo over a misprint on mail-in ballot envelopes. The Bloc has never run a candidate outside of Quebec, but theoretically, the Sovereigntist Party could run the candidates in the two Toronto ridings if it wanted to match the Liberal spending caps. And this is the thing that I mentioned when we were sort of musing about this yesterday, that they could. Nothing stops them from that. Again, people, when they want to get mad at the Bloc, they keep on saying, but they're not a federal party. They always run in Quebec. And of course, you have to do the civics bit that Elections Canada makes no distinction. Because if you are party deemed eligible to run in a federal election, you are a federal party, even if you decide to run candidates in only one province. Because nothing stops the Bloc Québécois from running candidates in those two Toronto ridings if it wanted to benefit and then just not spend any money on those two candidates and spend all that extra money in Terrebonne if it wanted to get that same advantage. They could. So running all three by-elections at the same time gives the Liberals a spending edge over the Bloc, as first noted by former Conservative campaign Fred Delory on his Substack. And in that, he says here, I'm going to go to Fred Delory's piece, Canadian politics rarely turns on a single riding. This time it might. With Edmonton MP Matt Genereux crossing the floor to join Marty's Liberals, the government now sits at 169 seats. In a 343 House of Commons, 172 is the majority threshold. There are 3 vacancies. 2, University Rosedale and Scarborough Southwest, are Liberal strongholds, and barring an upset of historic proportions will remain so. That would bring the government to 171, which leaves Terrebonne. In the 2025 general election, the Liberal candidate won Terrebonne by exactly 1 vote. The Supreme Court nullified the result due to a mail-in ballot error, sending the riding back to the electorate. If the Liberals win the rematch, they secure a majority government. If they lose, they remain in minority territory. This may be the most extraordinary by-election in modern Canadian history, and it could affect voter turnout. But this contest is not occurring on a level playing field. It's financially tilted. Okay, that is spin. It is on a level playing field. Everybody has the opportunity to field candidates in all 3, and everybody has the opportunity to then have the same spending cap. The fact that the current situation is that Liberals happen to be rather popular in Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec, and therefore may not have to work as hard or have to spend as much money to preserve the seats, does not mean that it's not an even playing field or that somehow the ground is tilted. To liaison polling, the federal government approval in according to Spark Insight, my apologies, federal government approval, Eastern Canada, 69% in Quebec approve, 31% disapprove, 67% in Ontario approve, 33 disapprove, and 6% in Atlantic Canada approve and 35 disapprove. This is supported a bit by Liaison, Mark Carney's approval polling, and Atlantic Canada, 71% approve, 23 disapprove. And I'm sure there's more here, but they're listing Saskatchewan, Manitoba, 56 approve, 37 disapprove, and British Columbia, 58 approve, 36 disapprove. Not sure if they have data for Ontario or Quebec listed there. In this one, where at least for polling, Canada is bringing up the information. So, with the party having positive approval in the 2 provinces, and more than almost 2/3 positive approval in the provinces where these by-elections are being held, if there's anything that is tilting the ground to the Liberals, it's that their performance as government. You can't actually be upset at them for doing their job well enough that they would have that much favor and say that the contest is not occurring on a level playing field, that it's financially tilted. So that's some spin. Under the Canada Elections Act, local campaigns have their own riding level spending caps, though these local campaign limits are separate from the national party's by-election spending limit. When multiple by-elections occur at the same time, however, the national spending ceiling is calculated across all of them. That money can be spent anywhere. There are 3 by-elections that will happen at the same time. For the Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP, that means a national cap tied to 3 ridings. In practice, the Liberals have little need to allocate resources to the 2 safe Toronto contests and can concentrate virtually all of its allowable national spending in Terrebonne. Well, that's good on the Liberals for having done the work of being present in those ridings for a long time, having good relationships with the constituents, and providing good constituency representation that the constituents would want to elect them again. That has nothing to do with the rules. The Bloc Québécois cannot do the same because it runs its candidates only in Quebec. Its national spending limit is effectively tied to a single riding, unless it makes the unusual decision to field candidates outside Quebec solely to expand its cap, which, in the CBC article I'm reading, Blanchette is laughing off as a possibility. The result is a major structural advantage. No, it's not a structural advantage. It's not a structural advantage. It's an advantage by virtue of the fact that the Liberals did the work, the constituency work. The same structure applies to everyone. If the Conservatives had done the work in those ridings to have candidates that were highly popular and had provided good governance there, they would have the same advantage that the Liberals have now. The advantage is directly tied to all the work the parties have done in these ridings before, over years, not because of the structure. The Liberals are operating with a 3-riding national spending allowance in a single decisive race, while the Bloc works within the confines of 1. In a riding decided by 1 vote, that matters. By-elections are won through organization, persuasive mail, voter identification, digital targeting, and turnout operations. All of those require resources. Money alone doesn't determine outcomes, but financial flexibility shapes the battlefield in subtle and important ways. The Liberals can deploy roughly 3 times the national resources the Bloc can, and maybe 3 times the resources that the Conservatives can too, if they actually want to try to win those 2 seats. But the Conservatives could do the same things the Liberals are doing, not spend, or they suspect the Liberals are doing, not spend a lot of money in those 2 seats in Toronto, in the GTA, because they feel they have no chance, and focusing all of their money on the Terrebonne. And as Brad Levine on Power and Politics suggested yesterday, maybe the goal of their spending is to help the Bloc Québécois get Bloc voters out, or to encourage Conservative voters to block that little majority by voting Bloc this time. The Conservatives finished 3rd in that riding, but only had 18% of the vote. Where does the 18% go? If the Conservatives have even managed to retain that 18% today. But let's assume they do. Do the Conservatives work hard in Terrebonne to try to win that seat, or do they work hard in Terrebonne, use all that money from all 3 ridings, just give up on the 2 Toronto ones, and use it to try to prevent a Liberal majority? Fred Delory doesn't talk about this in this piece, but that's a strategy that is definitely open to them by taking advantage of the exact same, allegedly, structural advantage. If the Liberals have a structural advantage to win Terrebonne, then the Conservatives have a structural advantage to prevent a Liberal majority. Based on the 2025 elector counts, the National Party spending limit for a typical riding of roughly 90,000 electors is approximately 110 to 115,000. With 3 by-elections occurring at once, the Liberal national cap is therefore in the range of 330,000 to 345. If the Bloc contests only Terrebonne, its effective national limit remains roughly 110,000. Local candidate spending limits in Terrebonne are approximately 150,000 per campaign and apply equally to all candidates. The imbalance exists at the national level. It's not an imbalance. At present, the Liberals govern with constraints. Opposition parties hold majority in the House, and the Conservatives and BQ combined hold a majority in committees. They can compel documents, summon witnesses, and use procedure to sustain uncomfortable political pressure. A majority wipes all of that away. And this is going to be the crux of the Conservatives' campaign. Prevent the Liberals to get those majorities, because we need to keep that combined majority on committees to block or check the Liberal agenda. Of course, here, once again, I cannot help but note the irony that the Conservatives are talking about working together with the Bloc, which again makes them break out into hives every time there's a talk about the Liberals working together with the Bloc. They're working with the separatists, but when we work with the separatists, well, that's not so bad. When we tag team in committee to hold up Liberal bills and we're working with the separatists, that's okay. But if we are in a minority government and the Liberals work with the separatists to get a bill across the finish line in the House, well, that's bad. With 172 seats, Mark Carney could prorogue Parliament, return with a new speech from the throne the next day, and reconstitute committees, with the Liberals now having a majority of seats around the table. Yeah, they could. And maybe if you had been a little more cooperative rather than obstructionists, you wouldn't have to be fearing that possibility today. Because Mark Carney seems like a guy who just wants to get the job done and wouldn't want to stop Parliament or committee work for a couple of weeks in order just to get the majorities on the committees. It seems that he would be perfectly fine with letting those committees run as is if they were actually doing what it is that they were supposed to do. Which is not rubber stamping, but which is actually debating those bills and proposing amendments, but doing it in a timely fashion, given that we should all be seized with the emergency and immediacy of the moment and aware of what a short runway we have in order to be able to make that pivot to protect ourselves. But, oh yes, I forgot, the Conservatives don't believe we should be making this pivot to protect ourselves. Because while he was on that Euro tour, and before going to that Euro tour, when he made that big speech, that big tonal reset speech, Pierre Poilievre's position was basically that our relationship with the United States is so strong and so deep that Trump is going to go away sometime, and we hope, because hope is a plan and hope is a strategy, that when that happens, that we would revert back a bit to the relationship we had before. So therefore, there's no need to consider this rupture as being a permanent rupture, and there's no need for us to be doing anything to reorient our economy. We should just lie back and keep on taking what Trump gives us for the next 3 years, because in 3 years he will be gone, and then we will be able, we hope, to go back to the relationship we had with the United States before Trump. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to go there if I was prime minister and say that, you don't get any of our defense money if we don't get a tariff-free deal, as if Mark Carney has not already thought of that. And the Americans would be convinced if Pierre said it. This is not a symbolic shift. It's an operational control of the House. Talbot, therefore, isn't simply a Quebec rematch, it's a hinge on which a majority government may turn. When the stakes become this clear, the ballot question inevitably narrows. Do you want a Liberal majority or not? So basically, this whole article is a preemptive framing to what the ballot question should be for these by-elections. In most by-elections, smaller party support compresses because voters are not choosing a government. In this case, the compression may be even sharper because the question is unusually simple: majority or minority. Conservative voters in Talbot know their path to victory is narrow. NDP voters face a worse reality despite holding the seat in 2011. Both parties must decide whether their priority is partisan expression or preventing a particular national outcome. For the Bloc, the challenge is existential. Its brand has long been built around denying Ottawa unchecked authority. If it can't frame this contest as a firewall against majority control, it risks watching self-support drift elsewhere. And a loss would also have implications for the Bloc's provincial counterpart, the Parti québécois, which not long ago appeared destined to form government, but now finds itself in a tightening contest with the CAQ. No, it finds itself in a tightening contest. Well, maybe in this riding with the CAQ, but overall tightening contest with the actual Quebec Liberals, as we just showed you in the polls yesterday. Quebec voters are highly attuned to leverage. The dynamic will shape turnout and tactical voting decisions in this week's end. And like I said, this could be a high turnout, like it could be also maybe muted turnout for the Bloc, because as we mentioned, the Quebecois people are rather smart and savvy, and maybe clearly don't have an appetite for independence at the current moment, given who the leader of the country south of us is. And therefore, they might want to block the majority, maybe, but maybe they just it's not as pressing for them this time around for the Bloc to retain this seat, given what's going on in the United States, and Trump's going to be there for a while, and maybe 3 years of stability and political peace, uh, given how tense everything is out there, might be a welcome prospect. And I have a feeling that that might be something that the Liberals will be running on. Probably not saying it too loud because, when you tend to ask for a majority, you tend not to get it. The best way to not get a majority is to ask the people for one. But um, the prospect of, in this tumultuous world where everything's changing and we need to act fast, wouldn't you like a little peace of mind and security over the next few years that you've got a stable government that appears to be competent and that you, after seeing us in action for 1 year, you approve of? Wouldn't you like our job to be easier at getting our agenda that you seem to approve of done? That could be an attractive political argument. Let's see. Province-wide polling now suggests the Liberals hold the momentum in Quebec, but by-elections often defy broad polling trends. They are local, emotional, and turnout-driven. And when the previous margin was 1 vote, incremental advantages matter. Organizational, narrative, financial, especially financial. So there you go. Getting back to the article, because it'll have a little bit more civics information for you. As Fred Delory mentioned, according to Elections Canada rules, all parties have caps on how much they can spend promoting candidates during by-elections, but the cap for a party increases if they're running candidates in multiple by-elections. According to Elections Canada, a party with candidates in more than one electoral district may distribute its election expenses limit across the electoral districts as it sees fit. That's for the national cap. With 2 safe ridings in Toronto, the Liberals will likely focus their efforts on Terrebonne. The by-election is a rematch with Tatiana Auguste running for the Liberals and Nathalie Saint-Clair-Desgagnés running for the Bloc. Not sure again if the other parties have declared their candidates yet. Bloc MP Normandin said Monday she doesn't think voters are focused on whether or not the Liberals have a majority or a minority government. Quote, the people in Terrebonne, they want a voice to represent themselves in Parliament, not a voice to represent the government in Terrebonne, she told reporters on Parliament Hill. Although the Liberals edged out the win in the now annulled election, Saint-Clair-Desgagnés had been the MP for Terrebonne since 2021, so she does have an incumbency advantage, and the riding has largely been held by the Bloc since the early 90s. Saint-Clair-Desgagnés challenged the results of last spring's election after a voter came forward saying their mail-in ballot had been returned to them because Elections Canada had written the wrong address on the return envelope. The 3 by-elections are being held on April 13th, with advanced polls open April 3rd to April 6th, and the Prime Minister did indeed pick the shortest amount of days for a by-election in Canada. So it's going to be a short campaign. And I believe, for some reason, I can't remember if that's 32 or 36 days. Maybe it's 33, something like that. The election period must be at least 37 days and no more than 51. There you go. I would assume that that also applies for by-elections as it does for regular elections, I would assume here. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what other parties, if they have declared their candidates yet. Maybe go check that when we have a video clip or something playing on to see if they've been announced already somewhere. I should be able to find out on the Elections Canada site if that is indeed the case. So yeah, there you go. Also, in by-election news, since one of the by-election seats is to replace Chrystia Freeland's seat, there is some news that went a little bit under the radar that came out on February 13th, also brought by Darren Major. It would seem that the Commissioner of Elections has ruled that former Deputy Prime Minister and Cabinet Minister Chrystia Freeland violated election rules during a 2024 by-election. The violation stemmed from comments Freeland made in response to a reporter's questions following a government announcement, a report from the Commissioner, Caroline Simal's office said. Freeland, who was finance minister at the time, was making the announcement in Toronto prior to the by-election in Toronto-St. Paul's. When asked by reporters about the upcoming vote, Freeland offered supportive remarks about Liberal candidate Leslie Church, the report said. Offering support for a political candidate while using government resources could constitute a contribution to church's campaign. Quote, Ms. Freeland was unaware that those political statements made in response to unsolicited press questions could turn the bona fide costs of a government event into an unlawful contribution to a federal political entity, the report said. The report says that the estimated costs, quote, associated with these events represents a commercial value of just over $900. The Liberal Party's Electoral District Association in Freeland's former riding agreed to pay that amount to the government. Church would lose the 2024 by-election, but won the riding in last April's election. Freeland resigned as an MP last month. Ministers are expected to avoid promoting partisan campaigns while acting in a governmental role. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was found to have violated election rules after he wore a Conservative Party shirt to a government announcement in 2015. So you can't do those things. So slap on the wrist violation, level violation. And it seems that, oops, I wasn't aware, my bad. And they did decide to account for that as a contribution and pay the value of that contribution. But yeah, just a little side note, little things, because when we like it when rules are obeyed, and we don't like it when rules are not obeyed, and we don't care how big or how small. Rule violations do need to be called out because you do want that level playing field that was talked about there. So I'm just going to see here if there is anything here. There's another article with regard to the by-elections. Also probably, no, by Benjamin Lopez Stephen this time. And here it says that the Liberals have their candidates for the two, for all three now. Tatiana Auguste is running in Terrebonne again, but the Liberals have said that family physician Dr. Danielle Martin will run in University of Rosedale, and former Ontario NDP deputy leader Dolly Begum will run in Scarborough Southwest in a defection that really shocked the provincial NDP party in Ontario. Begum's announcement in February rankled some members of the NDP, including interim federal NDP leader Don Davies, who accused Begum of undermining democracy and argued her actions, quote, breeds cynicism in our politics. It does no such thing, of course. I'm not sure how democracy is undermined by deciding you want an opportunity to run in a federal election, in a by-election, and leave your provincial seat. I'm not sure how it breeds cynicism that she decided that, provincially she was an NDP, but federally she's a Liberal. I'm not sure how that breeds cynicism any more than it breeded cynicism that Jean Charest ran as a Liberal in Quebec, given that there was no conservative or progressive conservative party there at the time. It's I don't understand these things. Fatima Shaban, the NDP's candidate for Scarborough Southwest, also ran for the party in the 2025 federal election and lost to Blair. The Green Party will run Pooja Malhotra in Scarborough Southwest, and Benjamin Rankin in Terrebonne, and Andrew Massey in University of Rosedale. So the Green parties have their candidates nominated already, and it seems that at least for Scarborough Southwest, the NDP will be running Fatima Shaban again. Who ran? Yes. There you go. Who ran in 2025. The Conservatives have not announced who will run under their banners in the three by-elections. That was as of March 8th. Anyway, maybe they've named somebody since, but the Conservatives seem to be behind here. In a news release, Elections Canada said voters in the area can cast their ballots on election day or vote in the advance polls from April 3rd to April 6th at their assigned polling station. If someone wishes to vote by mail, they must apply by April 7th. If they desire, voters can cast their ballot anytime starting today if they go to the Elections Canada office in any of the three ridings. As things stand, Liberals have 169 MPs in the House, as you know. Let's see, and that's about the additional information that I've got from that article for you. So that is some by-election news. We also have some news that we missed over the past few days, other fields, and I just thought that it would be a good idea to check on them because we have these big stories that are attracting our attention, and there's a lot more going on in the country, and sometimes when we have big subjects such as war in Iran, um, it how would you put it? It takes our eye away from things that are going on at home, and things that are important. Like, for example, when it comes to defense spending, there have been, according to Nick Murray, Ottawa will be spending $3.7 billion to build thousands of new military housing units. Defense Minister David McGuinty is announcing $3.7 billion plan. This was on February 24th to build more housing for Canada's military. The government plans to add 6,000 more units in 25 communities where the Canadian Armed Forces operate. That's in addition to 800 new units that were already underway. A report from Canada's Auditor General last year brought to light how the military housing units are getting older and are in poor condition. It flagged a shortfall in available housing across multiple bases. CFB Gagetown in New Brunswick is slated to get 500 new units. Kingston, Ontario will get 900 units, while Valcartier, Quebec, Petawawa, Ontario, and Edmonton will each get more than 1,000 new units. McGuinty says the measure will help the armed forces recruitment, which he told reporters was up by 13% over the last 8 months. That is good. Very, very good news that armed forces recruitment is up. And let's see if we can get a little more information on that, according to CTV News here. And the journalist is Dorcas Marfo on this one. Applications to join the Canadian Armed Forces are rising after years of missed recruitment targets, marking a turnaround for a military that has struggled to attract new members amid staffing shortages, pay concerns, and lengthy hiring process. In an email to CTV News Canada Tuesday, the Canadian Armed Forces said applications were up nearly 13% so far in the 2025-26 year compared to last year. That follows a 55% jump in new recruits in the previous year, with the Canadian Armed Forces reporting 6,700 new members joining them as of December 2025, the highest number of enrollments in the past decade. This development comes with heightened attention on U.S. President Donald Trump's recent rhetoric on taking over Greenland and his interest in the Arctic for national security purposes. However, the military avoided pointing to tensions from Canada's southern neighbor as a reason for the spike in potential recruits. Quote, "It would be difficult to correlate an increase in applications to any specific event. This year's increase is in line with trends so far that were already emerging in the previous 4 years," the statement read. Earlier this year, a senior federal government source told CTV News that Canada is considering sending a small number of troops to participate in training exercises in Greenland, following the lead of multiple European countries. Final decision about whether to send any Canadian troops had not been made, according to the source. While applications were up, the largest share came from southern Ontario, which accounts for 32.7% of applicants. The prairies in the north followed at 20%, and Quebec represents 15%. Retired Major General David Fraser told CTV's Your Morning that the renewed interest reflects both internal reforms and broader global uncertainty. Quote, "Crises normally help out recruiting," Fraser said. "Canadians, since Donald Trump has gotten in, we've got our elbows up. Men and women like to get in there and do things that are fighting and defending our nation." According to Fraser, Trump's efforts to secure Greenland is less surprising and more disappointing. Quote, "We got to protect our border, our sovereignty. We have to protect the North, and that means we're going to have to put more men and women up in the North, more people on the coast to assert our sovereignty as an independent nation," he added. At the same time, Fraser stressed the recent gains are also results of long overdue changes to how the military recruits. Quote, "The recruiting process was way too slow. When you're competing against Walmart and other companies, you can get a job quickly, but with the forces, it was taking you almost a year to get in." The Auditor General released a report in October and found that the Canadian Armed Forces relied on more than 8 separate, poorly integrated IT systems for recruitment and training, many of them manual and paper-based, leading to data gaps, inconsistencies, and delays. Quote, "These IT systems had minimal data integration and siloed processes," the report said. IT systems involved multiple users and fragmented database, resulting in discrepancies in data collection, quality, and interpretation. While a new online applicant portal launched in March 2025 was meant to streamline applications, key forms remain manual, and the system can't automatically verify or pre-screen applicants, leaving recruiters to follow up on every file. The Canadian Armed Forces has agreed to implement the following recommendation: modernizing recruitment IT systems with better automation, integrated electronic forms, and real-time data. In the past year, the federal government approved pay increases of 8% for colonels, 13% for lieutenant colonels, and below 20% for below 20%, sorry, 13% for lieutenant colonels and below, and a 20% boost to starting pay for privates in the regular force. Ottawa has also committed more than $80 billion in new defense spending over the coming years. Quote, soldier for soldier, they're capable and we should be proud of what our men and women can do, but this government is actually investing a lot more to make them even more capable, Fraser said. The Canadian Armed Forces said demographic trends point to shifts within the forces. Women currently make up about 30% of applicants for the regular force. Last fiscal year, 1,178 women enrolled, the highest number in a decade, and 921 women have already enrolled as of January 7th for this year's fiscal period. In April, permanent residents have accounted for 27% of all regular force applications, the Canadian Armed Forces said. The forces are making a big effort to try and connect better with Canadians on the pay and benefits that go along with that, Fraser said. So there you go. Some good news there as well. Also, militarily, if we're talking about that with regard to Ukraine, on around February 24th, according to Murray Brewster, Canada has announced that it was donating an initial $2 billion of military equipment, including more than 400 armored vehicles to Ukraine as the embattled Eastern European countries' war with Russia rolls into its 5th year. The Prime Minister announced the assistance at the same time as Global Affairs Canada announced additional sanctions on individuals and companies that are helping fuel Moscow's war effort, including Russian firms that specialize in artificial intelligence, drone production, and individual tankers that smuggle Russian oil to market. The Prime Minister also announced a 3-year extension of Operation Unifier, the Canadian military training mission that has since 2015 helped instruct an estimated 47,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Quote, we're in it for the long haul, Carney said on his way to cabinet. Russia is failing. The sooner they come to the table and actually participate in peace negotiations, the better it will be. Western leaders who are part of the, quote, coalition of the willing had met at the end of last month. Speaking to journalists following the meeting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia had not achieved its objectives in his country and that the next trilateral meeting aimed at getting a ceasefire involving negotiators from Ukraine, Russia, and US was supposed to happen within a week or 10 days of the filing of the story. It was about 4 years ago that Russia began 5 years ago now as we're entering that time, that Russia began a full-scale invasion of Ukraine with the aim of toppling the government in Kyiv. The United Nations Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine has confirmed more than 15,000 civilian deaths and over 40,000 injuries in the country since the invasion began. Washington-based think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, recently estimated that Ukraine has suffered up to 600,000 military casualties, including as many as 140,000 deaths. It also estimated that Russia has suffered 1.2 million casualties, including up to 325,000 troop deaths between February 2022 and December 2025. Moscow stopped releasing figures on the battlefield deaths in January 2023. Carney, who also participated in the coalition meeting, echoed Zelensky's sentiment. Quote, Russia is failing to achieve all of its objectives 4 years into this conflict, 12 years if you include its annexation, its illegal annexation of Crimea. 4 years on, Russia is failing militarily, strategically, and economically. Part of the enhanced sanctions package announced Tuesday targeted 100 ships that are part of Russia's shadow fleet of tankers. Also known as the Dark Fleet or Ghost Fleet, the vessels are mostly oil tankers, largely from Venezuela, Russia, and Iran, that operate outside the international framework with the intention of avoiding sanctions and price caps. Quote, this is the fleet that effectively facilitates illegal exports of crude oil, said Carney, so we're tightening that lifeblood from the Russian economy along with our allies. A price cap on the sale of Russian oil, a major source of revenue for the Kremlin, has been lowered by G7 nations, including Canada, to $44.10 per barrel. By lowering the cap from previous $47.60 and the original $60, allies are hoping to force Russia to choose between selling it at near break-even price or losing market access. David Silby, a military historian and defense studies professor at Cornell University, says very little has changed on the battlefield over the last year. Quote, the Russians are still winning the war in the bare sense that they hold the eastern provinces of Ukraine and are advancing, if slowly and at extortionate cost, Silby said. Of course, we just had recent reports that for the first month in a while, Ukraine actually gained more territory than it lost. Quote, I don't see popular will on either side breaking anytime soon. For Ukrainians, this is perceived as an existential war. For Russians, there is still fairly broad support for the war, and Putin's intelligence apparatus keeps dissent pretty well squashed. Given that, I'm thinking that this will remain stagnant for a while to come. Including the recent announcements, Canada has since February 22 committed more than $25.5 billion in overall aid to Ukraine, including fiscal assistance, humanitarian aid, and $8.5 billion in military assistance. The funds for new armored vehicles are coming out of the upcoming federal budget year, which begins on April 1st. The Ukrainians will receive 66 brand new Lab 6s from General Dynamics Land Systems Canada and 383 Senator armed patrol vehicles from Rochelle. Defense Minister David McGuinty said the purchases for Ukraine are not being made at the expense of rearming the Canadian military. Quote, as part of our defense industrial strategy launched last week, we are hyper-stimulating the defense sector, McGuinty said, adding that production will hopefully increase at both companies. Quote, I have confidence that we're going to be able to replenish not only the needs of the Ukrainian contributions we want to make, but also for ourselves, including in our forward operating location in Latvia, where we have 3,000 members of the Canadian Armed Forces. So you have that going on within the defense portfolio. Whoops, something happened here. There's something on my page that had reset. So let me just get back to where it was. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Yeah. So let's see what else we had. I believe there was a little bit more. There was the signing of a defense agreement between Canada and South Korea, according to Catherine Morrison of the Canadian Press. And that too was around the end of February. Canada and South Korea have signed a new defense agreement roughly a month after Prime Minister Mark Carney urged middle powers to band together in the face of great power economic coercion. Following negotiations that concluded in October, the two countries signed a deal related to the exchange and protection of classified military and defense information. In October, Ottawa said the agreement would be a legal basis to improve collaboration on everything from defense procurement and industrial security to research. At the meeting Wednesday, the countries also agreed to updating their strategic partnership to reflect the current geopolitical realities and begin negotiations on a defense cooperation agreement, including a legal framework for the cooperation of the country's military forces. In a speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January now, Carney urged middle powers to work together against American hegemony and the efforts of great powers to subjugate smaller countries. The deal also comes as South Korean firm Hanwha Oceans is competing with German submarine manufacturer TKMS for a multi-billion-dollar contract to supply Canada with up to 12 new submarines. Industry Minister Mélanie Joly told reporters that Canada is looking for industrial benefits beyond just the subs themselves, noting Canada wants to expand manufacturing vehicles from South Korean, German, and Chinese automakers. Conservative critic for national defense James Bazan argued in a statement that more non-binding agreements don't increase the operational strength and capabilities of the Canadian Armed Forces. Quote, what we need is for the Liberal government to listen to our servicemen and women and buy much needed equipment quickly based on what we need to defend ourselves. Yeah, they're already on that, James. Nearly a year into his term, and Carney has changed the rhetoric, but not the reality of what kit our armed forces have to do their jobs. So basically, the most entry-level complaint that you can come up with is what James Bazan had here. Because again, having to find something more substantive would require him. And once again, as it seems to be clear to us that, conservatives are not really into doing work. Oh, well. Let's see, what else did we have here? There was something else I saw not too long ago also on the military file. Sorry here, just taking a look. Of course, we had the deadline day where the Korean and the Germans did put in their bids for the submarine deal, and we read that article to you about how the new defense industry agency that had been formed was doing a good job at indeed making sure that this system, this new process, was happening at speeds that were more quickly, speeds that were quicker than had been seen in quite a long time. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? Just taking a quick look. There was something today because there was a recent announcement about defense that came out just over the last little while. So yes, then we looked. Oh, there it is. And then we talked about the submarine deal. Maybe some talk about splitting it, and the officials coming out saying that they weren't looking at that. And the most recent news. This is from March 9th, so it was just yesterday. Murray Brewster, again from the CBC, mentions that Canada's National Research Council is pouring over $900 million into a longer-term plan to establish a drone research facility and purchase Canadian-built Bombardier Global 6500 to support defense research. The funding is coming from the recent established defense industrial strategy. Canada's security depends on our ability to innovate at home, said Industry Minister Mélanie Joly at the announcement on Monday. We're strengthening our sovereign capabilities and supporting Canadian companies in the development of next-generation aerospace, drone, quantum, and biomedical technologies. Accompanying Joly at the announcement was Defense Minister David McGuinty and Stephen Fuhr, the Secretary of State for Defense Procurement. Quote, "We remain committed to advancing sovereign defense technologies that enhance security, create prosperity, and reinforce Canada's strategic economic position as we chart our course in an increasingly complex world," said Fuhr, who noted that the NRC, the National Research Council, has been doing world-class research for more than a century. The intention of the new center is to conduct cutting-edge research into drones with both military and civilian applications. McGuinty said the investment and research will help strengthen Canada's industrial foundations and get new capabilities into the hands of the military faster. The plane will be assembled at Bombardier's Pearson facility in Mississauga, Ontario, and the interiors will be completed in Dorval, Quebec, with more than 65 Canadian suppliers contributing parts. At the end of last year, the federal government agreed to purchase 6 Global 6500 jets from the Montreal-based company to replace the Air Force's aging fleet of Challenger jets. That contract was worth over $750 million and included production, training for crews, maintenance, and any military modifications needed. Built in Canada, the replacement fleet is expected to be delivered by summer 2027. The Challengers are used to transport government officials and for military medical evacuation flights. Joly said the jet being purchased for the National Research Council, which will be used for defense technological development, is on top of the order placed on in December. So an additional one. So there you go. The policy of spending our defense dollars in Canada where possible, being enacted here with this particular decision. So yeah, a nearly $1 billion commitment to drone and airborne defense research. Definitely something that we need. Also, militarily, according to David Baxter, it was announced yesterday in the Canadian press that Prime Minister Mark Carney plans to travel to Norway to observe the Norwegian-led NATO cold response exercise above the Arctic Circle. The response is run by NATO every 2 years and involves about 25,000 troops from 14 nations training together to perform land, air, and sea operations in our conditions. Canada, the United States, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, France, Sweden, and Finland are among the countries taking part in the exercise. While in Oslo, Carney is expected to meet with Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre to discuss trade, investment, clean energy, critical minerals, and the aerospace sector. The Prime Minister will also attend the Canada-Nordic Summit to meet with other Nordic leaders and talk about ways to enhance geopolitical cooperation. Before returning to Canada, Carney plans to stop in London to meet with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to talk about defense and war in the Middle East. So lots of developments that had been taking place over the past little while on issues related to defense. And again, it was nice to be able to have a block and give you an idea of what's going on. And of course, the industrial benefits that are happening to Canada from all of these initiatives. The housing on bases, I'm sure, will have a component by Canadian component with that as well. We talked about, in a previous show about the submarine contracts and how we're looking at benefits for the auto industry and also for having a spaceport as well in there. We've talked, and then of course, we've been talking about the Gripens a lot, and there was a couple of stories in there about that, but more sort of analysis of the purchases and the potential benefits of the purchases. But that is still underway. which, of course, with the amount of Gripens that Ukraine wants to buy, would create, again, another opportunity for us to be able to produce for ourselves and for other markets in such a way that we can maybe benefit from some economies of scale, which is the same thing, principle that was in the article about the drones and all that other type of stuff that maybe by producing for ourselves as well as for others, it makes the venture much more feasible on an economic level. All right. Other news that we have for you, kids and cubs. Uh, let's see what we have in this. Just going down the list because I believe, well, yes, there was some housing stuff there was the military for one. Then there was a story, I believe, that Kit Linda had sent me. Yes, this is one. Maybe a bit of a Canadians who make us proud story here. This is from Aurelia Matters from Charlie Fizette for Northern Ontario Business. And it's an article that says Modular Homes Factory doubles as training hub for Indigenous tradeswomen. The 24,000 square foot Indigenous women-led modular home factory in Kirkland Lake is on course to finish construction July 1st of this year, with homes going on sale later this summer. We are probably months out from being operational, said Bertha Cormier, Executive Director of Keepers of the Circle, the nonprofit Indigenous women's group that spearheaded the for-profit factory called Anishinaabe Uboy Gizuta. I hope I pronounced that right, but translates to People's Place of Building in Ojibwe. Keepers of the Circle, operated by the Timiskaming Native Women's Support Group, supports Indigenous women at 2 locations in Timiskaming Shores and Kirkland Lake. Quote, "This has been my first project of this size, and it's been a roller coaster of emotions," Cormier told Northern Ontario Business. The construction process has had its high and lows, Cormier said. More blasting than initially expected was necessary to level the ground, something that put the project 4 to 6 weeks behind schedule of the original March launch date and added additional costs. Quote, "You manage, you work around the schedule," said Cormier. The project was able to secure extensions from funders at the end of its contingency funding, said Cormier. The Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation, or CMHC, provided $10 million of principal funding, with additional funding provided by the McConnell Foundation, FedNor, and the Independent Electricity Systems Operator, IESO, to help fund the project's innovative parking lot solar power system. The factory will address the need for healthy, green, and economical Indigenous housing by producing modular housing panels made from sustainable materials that will be used to make homes designed to incorporate solar, wind, and geothermal technologies. Quote, "When you look at the housing statistics, a lot of our Indigenous communities, especially in remote northern communities, deal with annual flooding, overcrowding, and mold issues," said Cormier. Keepers of the Circle is currently determining pricing and consulting with different Indigenous communities about their specific needs. Sales will likely start with a roadshow to different Indigenous communities around the province. Quote, "These homes aren't just for Indigenous people," said Cormier. "We can build for anyone and for any design." When fully operational, Cormier said the factory will make modular panels for around 100 homes and community buildings per year, employing 14 full-time construction workers plus additional jobs in administration, sales, and marketing. Around 19 or 20 people will be employed per shift, with that number set to rise contingent on sales. The factory is already serving as a training hub that supports budding Indigenous tradeswomen with apprenticeships and mentorships. Women employed at the site have been put through the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW apprentice program, to help install the factory's wiring. Other opportunities have included training with New Liskeard's Peterson Construction, apprenticeships with carpentry unions, and crane operator training for one employee who will be able to install the panels. The factory finds its roots in an idea that wouldn't seem out of place on a popular Renault TV show. In 2022, Keepers of the Circle launched a pilot program where 6 Indigenous women with no previous construction experience learned to build and install panels for modular passive off-grid homes at Tukatree Passive Homes in Baysville, Ontario. "I didn't know how to read a measuring tape," said Colleen Carpenter, one of the participants in the original pilot program. "I was very honest and open about my lack of experience and knowledge with construction, but I was a very quick learner," Carpenter said. "My training with Tukatree had its challenges along with many victory moments." Carpenter noted both the difficulties involved with travel and working away from home and the strong communication and leadership skills the program taught her. The program helped her secure her current position as Keepers of the Circle's program facilitator and placement coordinator. Quote, I have a strong passion for helping my people in any way I can, she said. Carpenter recently returned to Toke Tree to continue more training and lead a small group of new trainees who are assisting with the building of the factory's 10,000 square foot administrative building, which is being constructed using the factory's own modules. Since the pilot, an additional 10 women have been trained to construct the panels. Toke Tree and the original 6 program participants were consulted to determine how the factory could cater to the specific needs of tradeswomen, Cormier said. Quote, we talked to the women and asked, if we were to build your dream factory, what would that be, said Cormier. The feedback led to the admin building incorporating housing for up to 6 workers who have to travel to the job site, and on-site daycare for up to 30 children for Indigenous and non-Indigenous women, and a cultural center where the women can smudge every morning and take part in sharing circles, discussions, where workplace stresses and concerns can be voiced. Cormier said Keepers of the Circle had also been working with the Native Women's Association of Canada, NWAC, apprentice program to learn from the Red Seal tradeswomen about challenges and barriers for women in the trades. Keepers of the Circle will work with employers and unions to ensure those challenges don't continue for women working at the factory. Women faced the same challenges 20 to 30 years ago, said Cormier, and now they're still facing them. Things like having no bathrooms and no PPE that women can wear so they're not having to fit into men's clothes. Cormier said the opening of the factory will likely involve a ribbon cutting in partnership with the town of Kirkland Lake, though plans are not yet solidified. Kirkland Lake contributed to the project by selling Keepers of the Circle 5 acres of land at $1 per acre, an action that Cormier said sets an excellent example for ongoing reconciliation practices. Cormier hopes to see the project duplicated elsewhere, noting the importance of green, healthy, and sustainable housing for Indigenous communities in particular. As an Indigenous person, we're following the foot trail that's left behind by our ancestors 7 generations ago, and I would like to know we're leaving a healthy path for 7 generations to come. So there you go, kits and cubs. Some definite good news there on the housing file. All right. Let's see, what else did we have here as well? On trade, of course. This is Mike Crawley from CBC News announcing that Canada-US trade talks have restarted. This is as of March 6th. For the first time since U.S. President Donald Trump called off relations last October, ostensibly over a TV ad, Prime Minister Mark Carney's point man on trade met face-to-face with his White House counterpart. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc was in Washington, D.C. on Friday to meet U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. When LeBlanc emerged from the meeting, CBC News asked him what happened in the talks, but his only comment before getting into a waiting vehicle was, "Have a good weekend." Oh, man. In a statement Friday afternoon, LeBlanc's office described the discussion as, quote, constructive and substantive. The meeting comes at a pivotal moment for the $1.3 trillion Canadian annual trading relationship between the two countries. While Trump continues to impose punishing tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminium, automobiles, softwood lumber, copper products, kitchen cabinets, and more, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement is up for renegotiation. The timing means Canada's efforts to get rid of those tariffs targeting key industrial sectors will be wrapped into the CUSMA trade talks. That gives the U.S. negotiating leverage for the many changes it wants made to the trade deal, including greater access to Canada's dairy market and an end to rules that force U.S. streaming platforms to run Canadian content and fund domestic production. Hovering over the talks, the U.S. threats to impose new tariffs to replace one struck down 2 weeks ago by the U.S. Supreme Court, to break up CUSMA into separate deals with Canada and Mexico, and to terminate the agreement, a move that could expose all Canadian exports to Trump's blanket tariffs. Tariffs will be part of whatever trade deal is negotiated with Canada, Greer told the CBC's Katie Simpson last month on the night of Trump's State of the Union address. Despite that, the fact that Greer and LeBlanc are now holding face-to-face talks is significant, said Eric Miller, a Canada-U.S. trade expert and president of Rideau Potomac Strategy Group, a Washington-based consulting firm. This is something which I think is a very positive sign, Miller told CBC News on Thursday. Trump canceled talks with Canada over the steel and aluminium tariffs after an Ontario government advertisement featuring an anti-tariff speech by the late Ronald Reagan aired during U.S. broadcasts of baseball's World Series last fall. Since then, Trump has threatened to increase what he called the tariff on Canada by 10%, hit all Canadian goods with a tariff of 100% if Canada makes a deal with China, impose tariffs of 50% on all Canadian-made aircraft, and block the opening of a new bridge between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit. he has yet to follow through on any of those threats. Miller said the resumption of talks now means the U.S. needs to start providing Canada with some specifics of what it wants from the CUSMA negotiations, putting Canada in a better position to respond. Quote, of course, Canada will have views on all of those issues and will be looking to preserve as much of the agreement as possible, he said. LeBlanc arrives in Washington with a new Carney-appointed leadership steering the negotiations with the White House. The Prime Minister has named Janice Charette, who served as the head of Canada's public service during both the Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau governments, to be Canada's chief trade negotiator with the United States. So taking over for Ambassador Kirsten Hillman as the chief negotiator, but she is not the new ambassador, of course. That is Mark Wiseman, who is a former global investment and banker, pension fund manager, and a friend of Mark Carney, who's now the ambassador of Washington. So while Kirsten Hillman was filling both posts before she stepped down, given that Mark Wiseman might be newer to the diplomatic world than from the business world, and will be bringing his business experience to the job. Janice Charette, who has been head of the Canada's Public Service during both the Harper and Trudeau governments, probably has more experience on the diplomatic issues, and there would probably be the better point person as the chief trade negotiator, and then Mark Wiseman adding his global banking and pension fund management experience to the negotiations as needed. So Kirsten Hillman was so good that she needs two people to do her job. Now that she's gone, we have good people. We have very, very good people. So yeah, that is going on. While a lot of people are sort of asking questions, well, why is Mexico talking and we're not? Well, actually, we are. We are. That stuff started on the 6th. All right. An interesting court case also brought to my attention by Kit Linda, because there's been a lot of anti-immigrant talk, both in particular by Pierre Poilievre and Daniel Smith, some rather stomach-turning anti-immigrant talk lately. Just blame all the problems that we have on immigrants. And Daniel Smith has been doing that, despite that there's tons of video all over the place begging for more immigrants, and that she was on a kick to double the population of Alberta. Again, just really interesting, right? Because the Conservatives always point to that Century Initiative that said that, that Canada would be able to increase its population, I think it is, to 100 million by the end of this century, which if you actually did the math, it would be immigration at a lower rate that it was at the time that the report was written in order to get there. And they were like running around with their hair on fire, like it was this thing, again, replacement theory and all that kind of stuff. When Alberta recently was on a kick to do so much more. Alberta, who had recently presented a budget that indicated that there was going to be about a $9.3 or $9.4 billion deficit, and Daniel Smith wanted you to believe that all of that was the fault of immigrants, despite the fact that last year Canada's population actually decreased by 0.2%. We also learned in that budget that about a couple of billion, between 2 and 3 billion, I think it is, would be needed to shore up all the administration of everything in health, because there was an Alberta Health Services, and Daniel Smith decided that Alberta Health Services wasn't good, that she needed 4 sort of independent sort of structural bodies. And of course, things haven't gone well on the health management file for her. And now she needs to basically recreate what AHS was doing, but in a different way. And that alone is going to cost a couple of billion more. But apparently, again, it's all the immigrants. And we have Pierre trying to make Canadians believe that refugees, especially fake refugees, of which there are so few, and again, these fake refugees that are allegedly being rubber stamped, so we still have a backlog. But if they are approved, then they are no longer fake refugees, because somebody had to have deemed that their claim was valid. So and the law already is such that if we have asylum seekers that don't actually past that level that they actually do have to go home. Now, some of them choose not to, but their number is nowhere so great as they cause the collapse of a province's entire health system. But it's all the immigrants' fault. Just, just believe that. This is a decision that comes from the Supreme Court that's probably going to feed them here, because they want you to believe that people are getting all these wonderful deluxe benefits that you are not. According to Franca J. Mignacca of CBC News, the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that Quebec cannot bar asylum seekers from subsidized daycare. In an 8-1 ruling handed down Friday, the Supreme Court rejected the province's appeal of a lower court's ruling. Supreme Court Justice Andromache Karakatsanis concluded the province's regulations on subsidized daycare, which date back to the previous Couillard government, discriminate against women refugee claimants and infringes on their charter rights. Quote, while all refugee claimants are denied access to subsidized daycare, the discriminatory impact on women is unique because they carry a greater share of childcare responsibilities, the ruling states. It goes on to say barring refugee claimants from accessing the daycares not only impedes their ability to work, but further marginalizes them from Quebec society. This also has a cost on the province, the Supreme Court argues, as it forces many to rely on social assistance instead. The Supreme Court ruling goes even further than a previous Quebec Court of Appeal decision that had suggested Quebec should grant access to all asylum seekers with a work permit. Canada's highest court says all refugee claimants who are parents should have access to the subsidized daycare system, work permit or not. Quebec's sought-after subsidy daycare system has aimed to keep childcare affordable in the province for years. In 2026, the day cost of a subsidized daycare is $9.65. The case before the courts originated with Bijou Chibwabwa Kanyinda, a woman from the Democratic Republic of Congo who applied for asylum and obtained a work permit. Her 3 children were denied access to the heavily subsidized daycare network because Quebec's rules provided access to the system only once refugee status was granted by the federal government. The Quebec government had challenged 2 previous court rulings, arguing the province's daycare system does not have the capacity to accommodate so many asylum seekers, as there are already lengthy wait lists to get in. It argued the service should be reserved for those with a deeper connection to the province. But the Supreme Court rules that while there may be a pressing need to limit care services to those with a sufficient link to Quebec, the province failed to prove how barring access to asylum seekers achieves that. Quote, there is no rational connection route between that goal and including refugee claimants when the subsidy is extended to others, the ruling said, pointing out foreign students have access to subsidized daycares, for instance. More than half of refugee claimants in Quebec are ultimately approved and make their permanent home in Quebec, the ruling adds. Catherine Champagne-Jourdain, Quebec's minister responsible for families, says her government will take the time to look over this latest court ruling. Quote, let's remember that our daycare network is facing strong pressure as it had to absorb the arrival of thousands of children of asylum seekers, she wrote in a statement on social media. Our goal has always been to ensure the sustainability of our network to favor the best possible development for the children. Back in 2024, the Quebec government claimed the province would need the equivalent of an additional 88 subsidized daycare centers to be able to place the children of asylum seekers, and that this could cost some $300 million in infrastructure investments and $120 million in subsidies. Tanya Henriquez fled Angola 3 years ago, settling in Quebec with her young daughter. A single mother with no access to subsidized daycare, she said she was left in such a precarious situation that she was forced to live in rundown, unhealthy housing conditions. Do I want to stay on social assistance? No, but how am I supposed to work, she said. Henriquez says she found a private daycare, but it cost $100 a day. With this latest ruling, she says she and thousands of others will get their dignity back. Quote, I think women are now free, she said. We have the right to live. We have a right to work. Sohair Kedana, who left Sudan for Quebec, also hopes to enroll her children in a subsidized daycare. She said it will allow her more time to focus on her French courses in order to better integrate in Quebec. Quote, before it was very difficult to do that because I have to be a mom 24 hours, she said. Community groups, including the Welcome Collective, were also pleased with the decision, which said it was almost 8 years in the making. Quebec's political class was quick to react to the judgment on Friday. Bernard Drainville, who is running for leadership of the Coalition Avenir Québec, is promising to use the notwithstanding clause if he is elected to ensure Quebecers are prioritized in the granting of subsidized daycare spots. Quote, the Supreme Court judgment is a slap in the face for the thousands of Quebecers who have been waiting for daycare spots for their child, often for years, he wrote in a statement. His opponent, Christine Fréchette, also said she would be willing to use the notwithstanding clause for this. What is primordial to me is that the children of Quebecers have priority access to the daycare network, she wrote. I will take all means necessary to defend this principle. Fréchette also took the time to repeat the province's calls to have the federal government ensure more asylum seekers settle elsewhere in Canada. Whoever wins the CAQ leadership race next month would automatically become the Quebec's premier until the provincial election slated for this fall. Opposition parties also spoke out against the ruling. In a lengthy post on social media, Parti Québécois leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon accused the Supreme Court of interfering again in Quebec politics and sending the message that the province should welcome an unlimited number of asylum seekers and offer them free services. This judgment also represents a distortion in the interpretation of the right to equality under the Charter, he wrote, saying he agrees with the dissenting judge. Quebec Liberal Party leader Charles Milliard said his party would also be open to using the notwithstanding clause in this case, but would like to look into the potential impact of the judgment first. He said a Liberal government, quote, would be open to using the notwithstanding clause, including an acquired rights clause, if there are important challenges for Quebec families. I'm disturbed by this reaction. I understand the idea of wanting, this is a pro-Quebec government, Quebec taxpayers pay into it, and therefore, we should ensure that there is a space for every child, especially from a Quebec family who wants one. Yeah, okay, absolutely. And that, yes, Quebec has taken an abnormally high number of asylum seekers, and there should be additional federal assistance for that. However, Quebec has also, on its own, imposed rules that you must learn French within a certain amount of time, or else you cannot access government services in another language. I think they give you a year. And again, if the alternative is people receiving social assistance and living in poor conditions that might need them, make it such that they have to have recourse to the healthcare system and maybe even the legal system many times over, rather than just funding a daycare space so that they can learn French in the amount of time that you want them to learn French, and that they can integrate like you say you want them to integrate. Right? You can't turn around and say people are not integrating enough. They need to integrate, and then cut off the means that they need in order to be able to integrate. If you can't go to French classes because you have to stay home 24 hours, you're creating 24/7 with your kids because you're a parent, then you are creating a situation where this person is less able to integrate, will be more isolated, and less able to join the workforce, to move from being on social assistance to a contributing member of society. And when I say contributing, I mean contributing as in contributing to the tax base with income taxes. At some point, you got to look at the entire math and not just say, hey, they're taking our childcare spaces and they're taking them away from the Dessouche Quebecers. At the same time, wanting them to learn the language at really fast speeds and wanting them to not be on the receiving end of government aid and assistance. You can either provide the daycare, provide them with the tools that are going to help them get over that wall from being on social assistance to actually having a job, from isolation to integration, or you can't, but you cannot deny them the means to get that and then expect the integration and the higher earning to happen on its own. So yeah, it's and again, this automatic recourse to the notwithstanding clause when it involves immigrants or asylum seekers is a bit disturbing. But it would be nice to see a government of Canada commitment to this, recognizing the fact that the asylum issue has been larger in the province of Quebec than it has in other provinces, and to provide the funding, additional funding necessarily for that to happen, so that we don't have to have conversations about who who's going to be first to the bottom to impose the notwithstanding clause, to deny people childcare. I don't. The, the program is successful and yielding benefits, and you don't have enough spaces already for your own population, you say. Then put the money into it. This doesn't seem to be that hard, particularly since this is a program that ends up paying for itself over the long run. Just put the money into the program. But yes, this is definitely going to cause, it's going to add fuel to the fire of the anti-immigrant and immigration rhetoric. Definitely. All right. And you know what? I think that for today, kids and cubs, that will be all I have for you on stories that sort of passed under the radar. There's definitely more stuff that's been going on, but yeah, just it's a nice moment to sort of check in on the rest of Canada. And all the other things going on when you have these big topics that dominate the news for days and weeks, and that are so spectacular, of course, that capture our attention. So happy to be able to do this today, and hopefully over the course of the day today, I will have time to fully look at Pierre Poilievre's speech before he went on his Euro tour, what he is, his Thatcher luncheon speech, and a couple of press conferences he's had since he's been back, to bring you a sort of fuller picture of what's been happening with him while all of this has been going on. Said the Euro tour wasn't as great probably as he'd hoped, probably again because of the fact that global events made it such that it pretty much bounced him off whatever potential front page space he could have occupied if Trump and Netanyahu didn't decide to launch a war on Iran. And if the prime minister had not been on a 10-day swing to the Asia Pacific announcing a whole bunch of deals. There's also the issue about whether transnational repression is still a thing on Canadian soil, allegedly at the behest of the Indian government. All big topics, of course, and then now announcements of by-elections. And of course, we have the NDP leadership race. There's a lot going on. And then there's a CAQ liberal leadership race, obviously in Quebec. So there's a lot of news, and it makes it hard for the opposition party to be heard. So I'm sure it didn't get the visibility that he had hoped it was going to get, but it may be a good thing considering some of the things he said. And one of the things about calling this by-election at this time is that once again, strategically, it gets in the way of Pierre Poilievre's pivot, because if he has to campaign in these by-elections, he needs a stump speech. And it seems that based on some of the things that I heard, again, he's going back to his old hits. The new sort of hidden carbon tax or whatnot that Mark Carney and liberals and whatnot are imposing on everybody and all that kind of stuff. And it's like girl, you've been like yammering on this carbon tax thing now for 2-3 years, and look where you are now. You lost the election, you lost your seat, your party is tanking in the polls, your approval is even worse, and that line didn't work for you. But you have nothing else. And as you are trying to convince us that you're doing a tonal reset, you're just, if you just go back to the whole everything is broken rhetoric, even if you don't say everything is broken, that's not going to help you sell this tonal reset. So putting Pierre in an electorally competitive situation, which is going to bring out those aspects of himself that he just cannot control, is also probably a strategic, happy consequence or benefit for the prime minister at this moment and the liberals. So it's going to be interesting to see if Pierre Poilievre can curb and contain himself during the next 30-something days while he is campaigning on behalf of his party and on behalf of his candidates to try and prevent a liberal majority. But he's still out there, saying, we got to get Mark Carney out of the way, but he just can't fully commit. he doesn't want an election. So, not sure how you get the prime minister out of the way if you're not willing to bet it all on red or on black and spin that roulette wheel and see if you win. He's going to try to maintain all of that rhetoric going at the same time and hope that it makes sense. We'll see. It won't. But for the people that are predetermined to swallow everything that Pierre Poilievre says as being the truth, and for all the U.S. supportive print media, in particular in Canada, who are all too eager to wipe the slate clean and forget that Pierre has a track record every time he tries a over or tonal reset or makes a speech. That's where he sounds somewhat human rather than the guy that's always campaigning at you. It doesn't last. It doesn't last. And at some point, we've got to start asking our media, like, how many times do you get to wipe the slate clean with this guy? Because for liberals, everything accumulates. It becomes one more thing on the pile. But for the conservative, everything just disappears every time he says, hey, I've got a fresh face. Even though it's my 128,126th one that I'm presenting to you, I've got a fresh face. And everybody, oh my God, he's so statesmanlike. Is this the beginning of the... Had he said this 13 months ago, he would be prime minister. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. The guy has a track record, and we remember. You forget, but we remember. It's not going to happen for him. He just does not have the stuff. It's pretty that simple. And the polls are hopefully, and I've been looking at that too. There's some public opinion polling news to bring to you about how things are going for the Conservatives. And it's just like for the Parti Québécois, where it's starting to get desperate, where they're starting to lose their majority sort of feeling. For the Conservatives, some people are wondering, the Conservative ceiling, the floor is we're always told was around 30 to 32%, 30%. Are they going to go below that? This seems to be the question these days. So things not going very well for the Conservatives. And when I'm noticing about these comments about the war, and comments again talking about hidden carbon taxes again, we got to get Carney out of the way and that type of stuff. It seems a little bit like Linus running for his security blanket, going to the political safe spaces that they know will at least keep the base there and the fundraising dollars coming in, but doesn't do anything to build a bigger tent for the Conservatives. There's been a couple more sort of statements now and then that seem to indicate some disapproval, maybe a little bit of Donald Trump. But when you make those and then you come back 12 days into the war and say, you supported the actions in order to gain regime change. Previous criticisms of Donald Trump, something that you may have done once in one speech and then never mentioned again until you point to it in another speech or a question. So, well, I did this last February. I said it, it has to be a sustained drumbeat over a certain amount of time, not just something you say every now and then when the water gets a little too hot. And then you can point back to say, well, I did say it once. That's not good enough for people to buy that's your position. So we'll see what happens. But yes, hopefully I'll be able to get that. And that's the show I'll be able to bring you tomorrow, barring some major event going on in the world that bumps that off of the headline. But that's the plan, because there's a lot to talk about there. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you share a little bit of yourself. Why does our content resonated with you? Because that is advertising we just cannot buy. It is absolutely priceless, and you are influencers in your own circles. So thank you for exerting that influence to promote what it is that we do among your friends and family and your followers on your own socials. I really appreciate it. It's been your work has been showing up in our view count numbers. So thank you. They've been going up. Little impressively, most of our shows are getting double the views now than they were at this point last year. So, and then sometimes more than that. So thank you for all that you are doing to help get the word out. It really is working, and it really is helping us. And we are very, very grateful. If you would like to help us in other ways, kids or cubs, you can do this by, hey, scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page. And if you are there and have not yet clicked subscribe, could you please? Because that helps us very much with the algorithm. The bigger our subscriber base, the easier it is for people to find us. And while you are there, if you would like to click on our like and share buttons, in case you did like today's episode and you thought that the content was indeed helpful, please do. That also helps us a lot, and we appreciate any assistance you are able to give us. Now, if you would like to offer some assistance in a financial form, because we do incur some costs to bring this show to you, especially now that we are back to being fully independent, you can scan this QR code, which will bring you to our coffee page, and you can find that at coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver. That's our emergency hydration fund, where you can make a donation to us, however small or however large you like. And you can make a one-time donation or a recurring monthly donation on that page to let us know that you are offering us an enthusiastic expression of encouragement to keep going. Because, oops, temporarily lost the connection there. I think I'm back now. So you can go to our coffee page. Oh, it seems I am a little fuzzy here. Let's see if I can fix that. There we go. That might be a little better. There we go. Disconnected. Connection was lost for a second. So yes, you can go to our coffee page where you can make a donation, either a one-time donation or a recurring donation, and we get 95 to 97% of your donation when you donate through coffee, and that would help us a lot with, like I said, the cost that we incur to bring the show to you, and our plans and our goals to expand to be able to bring you even more over the course of the next year. So if you could help with that, we would be most grateful. And kids and cubs, of course, we have memberships and super chat here on our YouTube channel as well. And we also have truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, which is our email address to which you can send a direct bank transfer if you would like to support us that way and ensure that we get 100% of your donation and none of it goes to the US. So you can contribute in any way that you like. We are absolutely grateful to get your donation. Just remember, donations through YouTube keeps 30%. Donations through coffee, PayPal keeps about 3 to 5%, and donations directly through your bank, the bank keeps none of it. We get 100% of your donation. Also, kids and cubs, if you are not able to donate financially, please use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, to donate or contribute in another way by, for example, letting us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. Some guest suggestions for interviews would be great, by using our Kids Who Cook hashtag if you happen to be making something yummy at home to provide us some inspiration, and of course sending us some good news that you've got going on in your life so that we can share in your joy like you share in ours when we have good news, and also to give us a little bit of a break from the doom scrolling. It's really nice to read when there's nice things happening to you. And if you happen to be creative, you're knitting, you're painting, you perform music, whatnot, hey, send us some pictures, send us some clips. We know that we have some very talented kids in the audience, and we definitely love to see what you're up to. Again, that too is a refreshing break every now and then. So send us all of that. We'd like to know what's going on in your lives and that you are doing well, or even when you're having a tougher time, so that we can offer you a little support. this is community. We're building it for a reason. So please let us know what is going on with you. It always makes us happy when you do. All right, kits and cubs, because democracy is something that you do. Hey, if you are an NDP member in mail and in, I think, by mail, and I guess well, I'm not sure how the voting happens. Uh, Otherwise, actually, because if you're in person, you can only do it at the convention. I think it is on March 29th. But for the NDP leadership, that has started in earnest. So please, if you have the opportunity there, according to the CBC, it says that New Democrat membership has hit 100,000 with the campaign to wrap up on the 29th, according to Marina von Stackelberg. And that's up from 60,000 in September 2025 when the leadership race began. So that's pretty good for the party. It seems that despite the fact that they are a smaller party, don't have party status, they've been able to break through with their leadership race. Of course, they've had 5 candidates that have been doing a very, very good job at trying to get the public attention and membership attention, and a good diversity of candidates, that it really does look like a good race with a good exchange of ideas. Interim fundraising numbers published by Elections Canada on Monday show candidate Avi Lewis has a significant lead on his opponents when it comes to bringing in money for the cash-strapped New Democrats. Lewis is racking up more than $1.2 million in donations from over 10,400 contributors. He, of course, has the biggest name recognition. Heather McPherson gathered just $560,000 from more than 3,800 contributors, so she seems to have fewer contributors but a bigger donation amount per contributor. Rob Ashton brought in just $357,000 from more than 2,000 contributors, and fundraising numbers for candidates Tennille Johnston and Tony McQuail have yet to be published. Them two have been helping each other out to be able to keep each other in the race by helping them meet fundraising thresholds as they've come to pass in a nice effort at teamwork there. The NDP is trying to rebuild following a devastating loss in the federal election last spring that saw the party lose official status in the House of Commons. Only 7 MPs maintained their seats, with then leader Jagmeet Singh failing to win his own riding and stepping down. And one of them, as we mentioned yesterday, André Boulrist, is looking to perhaps step down himself to run in provincial politics at the next provincial election. Of course, Heather McPherson has the advantage of being the only member of parliament in the race. Speaking to CBC News at an International Women's Day march in Vancouver on Sunday, McPherson said, quote, "She's the only one who has beat Conservative 3 times. Quote, I understand the reality that people are facing right now," said the Edmonton MP. "I don't come from a political family. We don't need a show right now. We need a serious party that can get to work and that can do the job of holding this government accountable on day one." Last week, Lewis told reporters he wasn't focused on winning a seat in the House of Commons if he becomes leader, particularly since the New Democrats have such a small footprint in Ottawa right now. Quote, "The new leader has to get in there, actually look in the books, find out what the debt is, figure out how to be election ready as quick as possible. There's a transition that is more important." Lewis ran twice unsuccessfully for a seat within the federal NDP and never held public office. His grandfather, David Lewis, was the federal NDP leader in the 1970s, while his father, Stephen Lewis, led the Ontario NDP. Richer said she saw the pitfalls firsthand of not having a leader who had a seat in the House of Commons when Singh didn't have a seat for well over a year. Quote, "Not being completely plugged into the day-to-day stuff makes it really hard because you're taking too long to respond, and you're no longer in the news cycle and no longer relevant as it relates to people." Other candidates include Ashton, a dock worker and union leader. He has pitched himself as the person to help the NDP bring back more labor and working class voters. He's racked up a considerable number of endorsements from unions, including the United Steelworkers and United Food and Commercial Workers, along with the president of the Canadian Labour of Congress, Beaver. Johnston, a social worker, city councillor, and member of the Wee-Wai-Kai First Nation, is the youngest in the race, pitching herself as a fresh and new voice for the future of the NDP. She's the first Indigenous woman to seek the top job with the federal New Democrats. McQuail, known for the distinct straw hat he wore during the debates, is an organic farmer from southwestern Ontario who says the party needs to take a holistic approach to policies, including tackling the climate crisis. Voting continues until the NDP's convention in Winnipeg at the end of March, when the 5 candidates will have a final chance to pitch themselves to supporters, and voting will also occur in person at the venue. The new leader will be announced on March 29th. And over the weekend, former leadership hopeful Yves Engler announced on social media the NDP terminated his membership. Engler had attempted to enter the race, but his application was rejected. Quote, "This is just the latest in the party brass's opposition, repressive opposition to our campaign, which is putting forward international anti-imperialist perspectives that the NDP wants nothing to do with," the Montreal-based activist said in a video he posted online. He added he wasn't allowed to challenge the decision. Quote, "You have engaged in conduct fundamentally inconsistent with the obligations of membership and contrary to the Constitution and principles of the party," says a letter Engler shared with CBC News, which he says was sent to him by the party's national director on Friday. CBC News reached out to the party for comment but did not hear back. During the final official NDP leadership debate in Vancouver last month, Engler and a group of people unsuccessfully attempted to storm the stage. So, what's a leadership race without a little drama? Of course, kids and cubs, we also have the public consultation on the Alto high-speed train, and of course, a House of Commons petition number 7148, which calls for the House to pass legislation requiring, whoops, that is, I do not know why it shifted on me to an old petition, even though I asked the page to. So again, this is the petition that is asking for the House of Commons to require that all federal party leaders obtain and maintain top secret security clearance to ensure they are fully informed of threats to Canada's national security and able to act decisively to protect Canadians and our democracy. The petition is now at 39,438 signatures, including it in the chat as I do every day, so that you are able to circulate it. There you go. And kids and cubs, finally, if you can, if you are enjoying the Paralympics and that great by our Canadian para hockey heist team on the other day, yesterday, I should say, you might want to contribute to the program's Fill the Stands campaign, where for $250 you can buy a virtual seat and help fund the Canadian Paralympic movement. So far, 10,299 seats have been purchased and $257,480 have been raised to date. And if you are enjoying the efforts and are cheering on Team Canada and feel inspired to do so, please donate. It is a very, very worthwhile cause. All right, that's all I have for you today, kids and cubs. Remember, it could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, kids and cubs, on the count of 3, if you would say, "Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock." 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear you. Oh, yes. Absolutely delightful. All of you are. You have asked so nicely, so kindly. So here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you, and you, and you, and you, and you there. Yeah, and even you back there. Yeah. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. A little bit of Canadians who make us proud. There are Paralympians who have 8 medals for us so far at the Paralympics. But in addition to that, there's a Team Canada playing at a big international baseball tournament, and so far doing very well there in round robin play. We had a badminton player, Victor Lai, who was the bronze medalist at the last World's Championships, the first Canadian to win a World Championship, reaching the semifinals at the All England Open this past week. So that was a good run for him there. We talked to you last week of Justin Boulet, one of the next gen tennis players from Canada. He had a fantastically last year, winning the final in both the singles and doubles tournament at an event in Portugal, and it's his second doubles title in 2 consecutive weeks. So that was some big news for him. He is now at a career high ranking in both the doubles and singles rankings. We also have some Canadians at the big 1,000 stop at Indian Wells. Felix Auger-Aliassime had a good victory yesterday. He was playing against fellow Canadian Gabriel Diallo in third round and has advanced to fourth round, where he's going to play Arthur Fils today at around 2 o'clock Eastern time. Victoria Mboko is also, now that she is a top 10 player, of course, in the rankings. And this is, by the way, Canada now has a top 10 male and female singles player at the same time for the second time in its history. The last time was when Bianca Andreescu had her extraordinary summer, and I believe Milos Raonic and Bianca Andreescu were ranked in the top 10 at the same. So this is great for them. And of course, we have the world's number 2 doubles player. So now all we need is a top 10 men's double player, and we're covered in all categories. But yes, Victoria Mbo is reached the 8th finals there, so among the top to 16 at this tournament, and will be taking on a higher ranked Amanda Anisimova in the next round. But also Victoria Mboko has been making some tongues wag in doubles during the tournament. She is partnered up with Mira Andreeva, who is the other teenager on the tour, who is ranked currently in the top 10. Victoria Mboko defeated her for the first time not too long ago in singles. So I guess they decided to join together. And in doubles, in the first round, defeated the French Open champions. Yeah, just because, it was a day that ended in Y. 2-1, and then have won their second round match and are now in the quarterfinals, taking on the world's number 5 team next. And even Felix Auger-Aliassime involved in the little doubles. Sorry, I forgot to mention Gabriela Dabrowski with her partner Louise also advanced to the same level in the doubles tournament, and if both Canadians win their matches, they will be facing each other in the semifinal. But even Felix Auger-Aliassime partnered up with, I think it is Stefan Korda in doubles to get a little. It seems that Felix might be playing a little more doubles than he usually does because of his Olympic experience with Gabriela Dabrowski winning the bronze, and then playing with Leila Fernandez not too long ago in another tournament. And I think he's taken a liking to mixed doubles in particular, so wants to get a little bit more experience. But he has won his first round and has advanced to the 8th of finals there, and has a pretty good matchup actually to the next one. So we'll see. He seems to be having a good week so far, progressing very well in the singles and the doubles tournament there. Also, congratulations, I believe, goes to Sanu, who took home the title at a local event here in Canada over the course of the weekend. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was in Trois-Rivières. But yes, she took the singles title there and was able to follow it up with a final appearance in the doubles tournament, where she didn't win that one, which was a bit of an upset. But a fellow Canadian, Alexandra Vagramov, with her partner, won that one. So there were 2 Canadians playing on opposite sides of the team, and they won that. And in addition, Canadians were doing very well in the singles tournament that Ariana Arsenault won. Another Canadian whose last name is Grubor, an up and comer again. I think her first name is Anna, if I'm not mistaken. But she reached the semifinal in that tournament in singles. So yes, Anna Grubor. And again, I believe she too is now risen to close to a career high ranking. So yeah, a lot of success for Canadians on the tennis courts over the past few weeks. Over the past 2, a lot of it overshadowed by Olympic competition, but a lot of Canadian players are reaching career high rankings, and and they don't seem to want to stop winning, which is a good thing. All right. That's all I got for you today. I believe that there is more para ice hockey today at the Olympics. It might be the last match of pool play for Team Canada on the Paralympic schedule. So hopefully you will get to enjoy that as well as other events that are on the schedule today. And with that, Cubs, I am gone. Amour et bisous, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.